Dan, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you guys?
I am really interested to ask you a question, which is the Bears are now ahead of the Packers. The
Yeah.
Bears are now tied for first place, and we'll see how the tiebreaker stuff works out. But they are now competing with the Lions for the number one division seat. And I'm just wondering, do you believe the Bears are behind the Packers? Do you believe that they're actually competing with the Lions for the number one team in the division? I know what the numbers all say, but there's been a shift here just based on them winning these games they've won and the opportunity, if not the ability, to take advantage of it.
What a place to be at, right? Where you're having to justify your 6-3 record
Mm.
rather than having to explain away your feeble winning percentage. And so the Bears are in a position here now where we all realize that in time the schedule is going to stiffen and they're going to have to prove that they're this team that right now is on top of the NFC North, tied with the Lions and inside the playoff picture as it stands here on November 12th. And we'll see how they can handle those things. They've played only one game to this point in the season against a team that would currently be inside the playoffs if the playoffs started today. And so, yes, they've feasted on bottom feeders, but bottom feeders is what the schedule has brought them to this point, and now it's their opportunity to go out and try to beat some better teams down the stretch of this season to validate who they are. Their strength of schedule or their strength of victory quotient right now is second worst in the NFL, ahead of only the Cowboys. So we can use that as context, but 6-3 is 6-3, and the NFL doesn't have like an admissions process to the playoffs where you've got to go explain to Roger Goodell and company why you belong in the playoffs. They just look at the records at the end of the year and they take the teams that belong inside and they say, come on in.
9 games in mid-season, if you are going to play a playoff game, 9 games in, Dan, who is the most valuable offensive player for the Bears? Who's the most valuable defensive player?
Well, you got me. You got me stuck here to start. I mean, like the knee-jerk reaction on offense would be to say that it's Caleb Williams just because of what he's doing down the stretch of games and because of the ability to basically rescue you now, at the end of four wins here.
Mm.
It's a big deal to have a quarterback that has that ability, and it's obviously been a reason the Bears are where they are right now. I might go with Kevin Byard on the defense, David, just because
Wow.
I think he's been a,
I
a
like it.
playmaker. He's been reliable. He's a guy that kind of gets the defense set every week, and Dennis Allen knows how to use them. And so that would be my my early Wednesday morning answer to that question.
I mean, I know this is, I didn't know David was going to ask you that question, but my knee jerk reaction to that question, I might say, and this is wrong, but I might say Montez Sweat, just because he's
Sure.
he's a living, breathing defensive end, and he's getting a sack a
Past
game.
month has been impressive.
And I'm
No
just
question about that. I can
and
see that.
maybe he's improving, and maybe his playing time's going up. I know that's an insane answer
I think
to that
Tremaine Edmonds
question.
makes a good case, Dan. I thought that's
Sure.
might be
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
went. I
Yeah.
wasn't trying to lead it there, but
But he improved when Edwards came back. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? And
right.
Edwards been in and out. It's hard. It's a hard
Well,
question on
and
defense.
to your point, Mully, like Sweat has made him self-felt here in the last month, right? Like every single game, you're getting a splash play, you're getting this uh sign of disruption that he's capable of being kind of that standout that you want him to be every single week. And so you want to see that continue. I feel like the coaching staff has been very encouraged at his increased comfort with what they're asking him to do within this specific system. And now you just want to see that production become consistent, which it has been now for the last 4+ games. And now you want to see that continue, obviously, Sunday in Minnesota against a young quarterback that you should have a chance to disrupt.
Dan, we're getting way ahead of ourselves a little bit, but I think that I'm curious about Jaylon Johnson. There was some Instagram post yesterday from a doctor he's working with that suggested that he's going to be back sooner rather than later, and you saw some video of him moving around. I don't know what to make of it because I don't think you speak of injured players necessarily in NFL buildings, and you just kind of wait and see. But as we wait and see, what is realistic, do you think, for Jaylon Johnson?
The short answer is I don't know. What I do know is that winning is contagious. And when you're on the outside watching your teammates celebrate win after win after win, the stretch here of 6 wins in 7 games is unlike anything that Jalen's ever experienced in his playing career here in Chicago. And so it probably adds a little bit more fuel than if you were 3-6 and going, I might just, take the cautious route with my recovery. And so, look, like Jalen's a competitor. He's a guy that's going to give his all every single day to try to speed up his timeline. And we'll see where it takes the Bears as they enter the month of December. What you don't want is what happened at the start of the season, where you bring him back and he's on the field for 2.5 quarters and then he's gone for a few months. And so, everybody that's in charge of that medical oversight is going to have to be very, very careful, while also understanding that he could be a really major addition to this defense.
Dan, since the formation of the NFC North, the Bears have struggled, and they've been really struggling over the last few years. When you look at what are they, 3-17, something like that of late, I'm just wondering, can you take the North, and can you never give it back if you can't beat any of the teams in the division? How important
Right. Yeah.
is this game for a breakthrough in that regard?
Yeah, there's no question, and particularly against an opponent that's already beaten you, and in a game that you won for 3 quarters
Yes.
until you fell apart in the fourth. And so, that motivation should be there. The Bears understand that. Ben Johnson understands that the path to great things in this league starts with being able to handle things within your own division. To your point, they've been historically really, really bad for throughout my entire time on the beat. And so you have to go into a game like this really, really hungry to change that and to find a way through it. Look, like we all realize the Bears aren't good enough to overlook any opponent right now. They haven't reached that state yet. And so they better understand how dangerous this Vikings team is. I know they've been in some up and down roller coaster mode through much of the year, but they went into Detroit a couple weeks ago and beat the Lions. That they're pretty good at home for the most part. And so you better be very, very sure of what you're going to face on Sunday, and that's a pretty good team.
And the Vikings might be injured if Gennard doesn't go. And
Sure.
I think even if he does, Dan, the Ben Johnson commitment to the run wasn't as obvious early in Sunday's game as I thought it might be. Could that change on Sunday in Minnesota in a building where I think that would help neutralize some of the outside elements? And if it does, how do you see the carries being distributed?
Yeah, I hope it changes a little bit, because the first half of that game against the Giants left me a little bit unsettled. I think they had 19 called passing plays and 13 called runs against a defense that we'd said all week would be one that you could run on, regardless of what they showed you up front. Sometimes you just have to commit to it and say, like, look, this isn't a favorable look. We're better, and we have offensive linemen that are gonna do some things, and we're gonna just commit to this and get our backs going. And I didn't think they did that great on Sunday. We'll see how they respond this week against a very different defense, against some very different looks. But I would hope that that's a focal point. Look, like I think you watch the Bears and you're like, man, this offense has shown flashes, but they haven't really hit stride. And then you get into the numbers and you're like, they're third in the NFL in total offense right now. They're second in the league in rushing. And knowing where we've come from with this franchise and the historic struggles to be anywhere near the top 10 in total offense, it's staggering to look at that and be like, wow, the Bears are ahead of the Lions, they're ahead of the Rams, they're ahead of the Chiefs in the yardage that they're putting up right now. And so in Ben we trust, right, until he proves that he's untrustworthy.
So, Dan, we had this conversation yesterday where we talked about the division and the quarterbacks in the division and where you would put each guy. And it would appear that Caleb, as you mentioned earlier, with the 4 comeback victories and being at his best late, other than Goff, he might be the next best quarterback currently in the NFC North. Do you agree with that? Has he shifted from a more lowly position within the league to maybe breaking through a little bit under Ben Johnson's guidance?
He certainly jump-started the conversation, and I put out a tweet during that game Monday night classifying Jordan Love as mid, because I think David, I've been saying it for years that I think there's a lot of people in Green Bay that think that quarterback is better and has a higher ceiling than he's ever had, and he's going to be one of these guys that keeps you in middle tier quarterback play for a very long time, and so they've got to decide what their comfort level is there. With Caleb, I think one of the things that truly has me enthusiastic is that, one, we've talked obviously about the clutch play down the stretch of games, but he also takes care of the football. And so when you have those
Right.
two boxes, checks and Sharpie, and you have this long list of things to work on, it gives your coaching staff a ton of comfort, where you're like, man, there's a lot with this quarterback that we've still got to squeeze out of him. But He doesn't give the ball away. And when the game's on the line, he goes and wins a bunch of games for us. And so that's where Caleb's, future seems so bright, and where you keep believing it until you can't believe it anymore. And it's been great to watch him, David, improve in the sack avoidance, his sack rate down from 10.8% to 4.6, and then obviously the scramblings come alive in the last couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, and in Green Bay, they do not have that certainty that they thought that they had. And
Right.
I thought that
The lovelorn Packer fan.
But losing Tucker Kraft,
it's got to hurt. No doubt about it.
And I don't know. I honestly, he seemed to be the one guy on that team that caught everything thrown his way.
He did, and he's
a big guy, you can see him.
Dan, before we let you go, I want to ask you a question about one of your favorite players that I've really been impressed with this year in terms of, before you chuckle, his acceptance of a different role, of a diminished role. Cole Kmet has been injured. He came back. He's got 11 catches at midseason, and yet it hasn't affected his blocking. How do you think he has fit into that role? Is it reluctantly? He hasn't spoken as much. Is that as a product of because he's not been as involved? What do you make of Cole Kmet?
Great question. I haven't given it a ton of deep thought, but I do think what you have in Cole and what you've had since the day he got here is a selfless player who has had his fill of losing here in Chicago and really would trade anything to be part of these winning locker rooms. And to watch him stand up after the game on Sunday and be so enthusiastic about what this team is building here with both Caleb in the clutch and with Ben. I thought his comments on Ben being very calming with his patience, even when a team is behind and needs to get its offense going, was telling of a player who had bought in and feels the surge of a football team that's won 6 times in the last 7 games. So look, I think Cole would probably love to be a lot more productive in the passing game, but he's been since day one a professional. He makes himself available to play as often as he can. Missed his first game of the year earlier this season, and I think you've got a lot to work with there as you go forward. I'll give you one last little nugget here, David, on the totally off topic, but Sunday is the Bears' last roof game, and this is interesting as we go forward, guys, for a team that has struggled on 4th down, doesn't have certainty in its kicking game. This is the last time they're going to play indoors in the regular season, and so I just wanted to throw that out there because that one struck me as I was looking at the schedule yesterday,
especially for a play caller who is used to late in season, calling games that matter indoors
in a dome.
Yeah. So after Sunday, get your long sleeves out and get ready to be outside for the remainder of the run.
Dan, just for snorts and giggles on the way out, I'll ask you David's question again about the offense, the offensive MVP who is not a quarterback. If you had to pick a player on the offense, you weren't allowed to say, Caleb, who would be your guy?
I'm almost leaning 58, guys, just because of what he's put on tape in the last few weeks and the edge he's given that offensive line. But maybe
and the nickname the coach has given him,
the unicorn.
That's it.
I don't know about that.
If he's a unicorn, then he should get that.
That's a good answer. I would lean toward DeAndre Swift, even though they won without him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this offensive line right now is doing things that we haven't seen an offensive line do in a while. They're together. Everybody's playing every week. We're not spending 10 minutes of this segment asking who's going to be at guard, who's going to be at tackle. Like they've got stability at this moment, and it's really refreshing because we've lived so many years where it's just a complete revolving door on who's starting every week.
Thanks a ton, Dan. Great stuff.
Great stuff, Dan.
All right, guys, talk soon.